farmer and being a poet. He's trying to make a what? A comparison and a connection to his dad and his grandfather, and probably many men who came before them, because potato farming is a very old type of profession. The poem was written before World War II, and there was a lot of training that took place like on the island for World War II with the British soldiers, and that was his first exposure to any sort of like weaponry, etc. And that would be why he was referencing the gun in the poem as well. That similarly seemed a little bit out of place in the context of the poem. Okay, so what is the point of all the details about the poet's father, or stanzas 2 through 5? We have, under my window a clean rasping sound when the spade sinks into the ground, my father digging. I look down till his straining rump among the flower beds bends low, comes up 20 years away, stooping in rhythm through potato drills where he was digging. The coarse boots nestled on the lug, the shaft against the inside knee was levered firmly. He rooted out tall tops, buried the bright edge deep to scatter their new potatoes that we picked, loving their cool hardness in our hands. By God, the old man could handle a spade, just like his old man. My grandfather could cut more turf in a day than any other man on Toner's bar. Once I carried him milk in a bottle, corked sloppily with paper. He straightened up to drink it, then fell to right away, nicking and slicing neatly, heaving sods over his shoulder, digging down and down for the good turf, digging. Why did he include all of these specific details about his grandfather in those stanzas? What is he showing about his grandfather? How proud he is of his grandfather, right? He's proud of him, and that what type of work is potato farming? It's very, very hard work, exactly. So he's showing not only is he proud of him and he reveres him, but he's showing how hard his grandfather and his father worked at this particular profession. What is the point of the details about the grandfather in stanza 6? We learn a couple of things. We know that his grandfather could cut more turf in a day than any other man on Toner's bog, which promotes a sense of pride about that work. And then what else do we know about the boy? He's carrying him the milk in a bottle, corked sloppily with paper. How was the author or the poet involved as a child with the potato farming?
He was watching on the sidelines.
Yes, he was watching on the sidelines, and he probably ran like the little chores, like bringing snacks and bringing milk, corked sloppily. Good. In stanza 7, the cold smell of potato mold, the squelch and slap of soggy peat, the curt cuts of an edge through living roots awaken in my head, but I have no spade to follow men like them. So time-wise, where are we now? In the present, right. So he's looking back. His grandfather and his father are probably what now? Dead. They're probably dead now, yes. Okay, considering the opening and closing lines that relate to the poet, who is he, what is his relationship besides kinship to the men he describes in the work they perform? That's how he grew up. He was exposed to that. So what does he attempt to dig with now since he has no spade? His pen. And what is he digging for? A connection between him and his father and the work that both of them did. You wouldn't immediately think of potato farming and poetry as being like in any sort of similar category, but he makes a connection in the poem and from the past to the present. The theme of the poem is what? Potato farming is hard. That's one thing that comes across. What else? What else about family relationships?
That's what family dynamic.
Family dynamics, right? You know, the family dynamics of somebody not wanting to follow in the steps of like their father or adhering to what their family wishes them to do. Also, the importance of what type of relationships? Father and son, exactly. And the connection there, despite the fact how different they were. The tones in the poem. How does he feel about his grandfather and his dad? Positive.
It's like a fond remembrance.
Yes, there's very fond memories of like watching as a little boy his grandfather and father do this work. Good. Since his father and his grandfather are possibly passed away, probably definitely his grandfather since he's writing this as an adult, what is the emotion that he expresses towards the memories of them? When you remember the past fondly, it's called what?
Admiration.
Admiration, good. And what else?
Nostalgia.
Nostalgia, right. There's both of those qualities there as well. What type of figure of speech is used in line 2? The squat pen rests as snug as a gun. Simile, right? And why is he comparing a gun to not only a pen not only to a spade that you would dig potatoes with, but also to a gun? What is the power of the pen?
And it's mighty like a sword.
Yes, exactly. Yes, it's basically another way of saying that in the poem, and then also there's the influence of being exposed to the soldiers' training in Ireland for World War II. And the significance of the enjambment between lines 6 and 7, it was actually 5 and 6, I had that wrong. My father digging, I looked down till a straining rump among the flower beds. We have enjambment with that line. But what physically happens to us between stanza 2 and 3? We look down, exactly. So there's significance to that. The poem not only, reflects his connection or his attempt at connection with his dad and his grandfather, but it physically kind of moves in the same shape as the action of the poem. And then how many people, impacting repetitions. The most impacting one would also be the title, and that's significant because he's not only digging for connection, he's digging through the past, and it's referencing the work that he does with his pen as well as the work that his father and grandfather did with the potatoes. And what else is repeated in the poem?
The first stanza.
Yes. Why is that repeated?
Just reiterates it.
Yeah, like bookends it, yes.
Yeah.
That he's gonna dig with his pen because that's his tool of choice in his profession. What else is repeated? Spade, and that's important because the spade is what they dug with, whereas the pen is what he's digging with. Potatoes, why is potatoes repeated in the poem? That was their life, that's what they did. I mean, how do you think his father reacted when he was like, I'm gonna go across the pond to write poems? What do you think was the reaction of his family when he said that?
Probably weren't too happy.
No, because they probably A, needed the labor, and then B, just couldn't understand. Like, what do you mean you're gonna go write poems when we have this potato farm to run? Alliteration, there was a ton of alliteration. There's a ton of all three of them, actually. It was a very assonance, alliteration, and consonance heavy poem. Snug as a gun, that repetition of the U would be assonance. In line 4, gravelly ground would be what? Alliteration. Yes. Buried the bright edge deep in line 12, that buried and bright creates alliteration. Same with line 14 with hardness and hands. In line 15 with handle and spade, old handle and spade, we have what? The D. And what? Consonants. So typically people have the most difficulty with. Anyone find any other examples of it?
Over his shoulder, digging down.
Down and down, good. So digging down and down, and we have repetition there as well as alliteration. Good. In line 26, Kurt cuts, you have not only alliteration but consonants there. So the poem is very heavy with poetic elements, even though it's categorized as free verse. We talked about how free verse is like saying body of water. It can be like very, very, very free verse, or it can have a lot of poetic techniques and just happen to be categorized as free verse. When you address an absent person, place, or thing, that's called what type of poem? Apostrophe, right? And the poem that was meant to be sung to the accompaniment of the lyric is what type of poem? Lyric? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so our second poem. Caroline Duffy moved from the UK to Canada when she was a kid. So that's the sort of context of the poem. Okay, so I'm gonna read back through it to refresh us on the content. Originally, we came from our own country in a red room which fell through the fields, our mother singing our father's name to the turn of the wheels. My brothers cried, one of them bawling, home, home, as the miles rushed back to the city, the street, the house, the vacant rooms where we didn't live anymore. I stared at the eyes of a blind toy holding its paw. All childhood is an emigration. Some are slow, leaving you standing, resigned up an avenue where no one you know stays. Others are sudden, your accent wrong, corners which seem familiar, leading to unimagined pebble-dashed estates, fake boys eating worms and shouting words you don't understand. My parents' anxiety stirred like a loose tooth in my head. I want our own country, I said. But then you forget, or don't recall, or change, and seeing your brother swallow a slug feels only a scalp of shame. I remember my tongue shedding its skin like a snake, my voice in the classroom sounding just like the rest. Do I only think I lost a river, culture, speech, sense of first space in the right place? Now, where do you come from, strangers ask. Originally, I hesitate. Okay. So in the first tone of the poem, we have them leaving their perceived, childhood home, and what is her tone in the first stanza? Towards leaving. Is she happy about it? No. And also, a sense of almost like confusion. What would you perceive her age to be in the first stanza? When they left? Young. Beyond like being able to comprehend what's going on. Did anyone move as a kid? One of my most traumatic childhood memories is switching bus stops. Like it is. Like I remember the first day waiting at my new bus stop, same school. It was just a different bus stop, and it's like horribly traumatizing. It was at the time because I didn't understand. What else do we have tone-wise in the first poem? In the first stanza. Anything else? What does she feel towards her childhood home? Like, is she sad that she's leaving it? Yes, there's a sadness as well. The significance of the first sentence of stanza 2, all childhood is an emigration. In what ways is all childhood an emigration? Everybody leaves, right? And you're always changing. Like if you're not changing classrooms, you're changing buses, what changes about your body in childhood? Everything. Like every year you grow bigger, your teeth fall out, like all sorts of weird stuff happens that as adults like you forget about, but like that stuff everything's always changing as a child. The tones in the second stanza. How would we identify the tone in the second stanza? This is where she gets there and all of a sudden like everything's different.
She's like embarrassed.
Yeah, she's embarrassed of being different. Exactly. What else? Kind of confused. There's still an element of confusion towards like her new area, etc. And when she says, I want our own country, what would her tone be there? Yearning. Like she wants her own country. She's yearning there. She wanted to go back at that point. But then in the third stanza, what does she become like about her circumstances? When you kind of accept things and you're like, well, this is the way it is. I'm going to just accept it. That's called being what? Content or resigned, right? She's just resigned to it, and then she becomes content with it because that's where she is now. What is the theme of the poem? That line, all childhood is an immigration, can kind of sum it up in one way. And then also, what is, about cultural identity? Does she have any specific cultural identity at the end of the poem? No, she lost it. She lost her original, and then she morphed into something that kind of assimilated into her current state, but it's not where she came from. So, how many people have ever felt that way? Even with like a job, like you can feel that way, like, with family, etc. When asked the two questions on line 23 and 24, why does she hesitate?
Because she's kind of like ashamed.
Yeah, she's ashamed and she doesn't know. Like, there could be a sense of shame too with coming from an area that no one else is from. Even though,
Moved multiple times and she doesn't really know where she's from.
Yes, she doesn't know like what her core is, like what her base is. We kind of went over that. What did we think her age was? About 4 or 5 in stanza 6? 7? Yeah, no, it depends on how, like now, kids would be exposed to so much more by the age of 4 or 5. But, there she was probably sheltered. She probably, wasn't exposed to like media at that age, etc. And plus they were traveling to the turn of the wheels, which means they were probably traveling by what? Yes, covered wagon. So there probably wasn't much exposure for her to the outside world. So she could be anywhere from like 4 even to like 10, and she just doesn't have any perception of leaving at that point. What type of figure of speech is used in line 5? As the Miles rush back to the city, the Miles are doing that action on their own, so that's called what? Personification. Good. Lines 15 and 16. My parents' anxiety stirred like a loose tooth in my head. Why did she use that particular simile? When you have a loose, well, think back, like however long. When you had a loose tooth, what can you not stop doing?
Wiggling it.
Wiggling it and playing with it, right? So her parents' anxiety of being in this new place was what sort of presence to her? Constant, because she couldn't stop like focusing on it. Now we just get like hangnails and stuff. We don't lose teeth anymore. The significance of the speaker's italicized statement in line 16, I want our own country. Is she yearning at that point for the place that she came from still?
Yeah.
Yes, she's still yearning for that. Whereas in The third one, she is content and resigned to her new location, although she still can't identify fully